Welcome back to Cinematic Century Chronicle, where I reflect on at least one film from every year between 1920 and 2020. We started in Germany with The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, then traveled to Hollywood with Chaplin's The Kid, and to Sweden with The Phantom Carriage. Now, we return to Germany for a film that gave us the first true screen vampire, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. This is one of the most famous silent films ever made, and for good reason. It's the first surviving vampire movie, and it laid the groundwork for an entire genre. But the story behind it is almost as fascinating as the film itself. Lawsuits, near destruction, eerie legends, and visuals that remain iconic a century later. Just a quick note, this video contains spoilers for Nosferatu. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it and come back. At just over 90 minutes, it still feels unsettling and atmospheric as ever. When audiences saw Count Orlok for the first time, he didn't look like the suave aristocrat they expected. Nosferatu's vampire is bald, rat-like, and feral, with long claws and hollow eyes. Instead of smooth seduction, Orlok brought pestilence, literally. He arrives in Wisborg with coffins filled with plague-ridden rats. This choice separated Nosferatu from later Dracula films and gave Orlok a sense of ancient, uncanny menace. Watching him move, stiff, awkward, almost insect-like, makes him less of a man and more of a plague made flesh. Some of my favorite images come from these sequences. The shadow of his claws creeping across Hutter's chest, Orlok rising stiffly from his coffin, and that eerie shot of coffins paraded down the streets, echoing the real specters of war and flu that German audiences had lived through just a few years earlier. Unlike Caligari, with its painted sets and twisted designs, Nosferatu was filmed largely on location. Cinematographer Fritz Arno Wagner, who later shot 1931's M, gave the film an unsettling realism. Natural landscapes, quaint villages, and open seas aren't what we normally think of as horror backdrops. But Orlok's presence corrupts them. He doesn't just haunt castles, he invades the ordinary world. One of my favorite shots comes around the 23-minute mark, Hutter framed in a bright archway while Orlok stands in darkness next to him. Light versus dark, safety versus menace, captured in one perfect frame. Another subtle moment I love is when Hutter peeks out the door and the hinge forms an arrow pointing directly at him. A visual omen hiding in plain sight. Wagner's camera also gave us the unforgettable shadows. Orlok's silhouette climbing the staircase, his claw creeping up the wall. These images are so simple, but their starkness has burned into cinema history. The story of how Nosferatu was made is almost as fascinating as the film itself. The production company, Prana Film, was founded by Albin Grau and Enrico Diekmann. Grau, an occultist and artist, wanted a studio dedicated entirely to supernatural films. According to Grau, the inspiration came during World War I when a Serbian farmer told him stories about vampires. Grau filled the film with esoteric touches, strange sigils, occult writings, and haunting production design drawn from his own mystical background. But Prana Film's dream didn't last long. They couldn't secure the rights to Bram Stoker's Dracula, so they made Nosferatu anyway, changing names but keeping the story. That led to a lawsuit from Stoker's widow, Florence, who demanded all copies be destroyed. The court ruled in her favor. Prana Film went bankrupt after releasing only this single movie, and many of the German prints were ordered burned. The only reason we still have Nosferatu today is that foreign prints survived, so the film is both Prana's beginning and its end, the studio's first and last breath. Part of Nosferatu's eerie power comes from its lead, Max Schreck. He was such an unknown actor that audiences barely knew what to make of him. His gaunt appearance and strange movements were so convincing that rumors spread he might actually be a vampire. The idea stuck around for decades, even inspiring the 2000 film Shadow of the Vampire, which imagined Schreck as a real monster hiding in plain sight. In reality, Schreck was a dedicated stage actor who trained in Munich. His surname, which means fright, scare, or terror in German, only added fuel to the legend. While Schreck became legend, the rest of the cast also has fascinating stories. Greta Schroeder, who played Ellen, wasn't actually a major star, though many assume she was. Nosferatu became her most enduring role. Gustav von Wangenheim, who played Hutter, later fled Nazi Germany, worked in Soviet cinema, and then returned after the war, a life as dramatic as anything he portrayed on screen. Then there was F.W. Murnau himself, After Nosferatu, he went to Hollywood, where he made Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, in 1927. That film not only became one of the most celebrated silents ever made, it also won at the very first Academy Awards. It's remarkable to think the same man who gave us the most haunting vampire of the silent era also helped establish cinema as high art on the world's biggest stage. Even the production carried its own legends. For the ship sequences, Murnau didn't rely on miniatures. He rented a real vessel, filled it with coffins, and sailed it into port. The ship itself was destroyed not long after, adding to the eerie aura that already surrounded the film. When I rewatched Nosferatu, certain images lingered. The shot of Orlok emerging ghost-like into Hutter's room. The seaside scene where Ellen looks out toward the waves, her face caught between yearning and dread. Orlok peering from his window at Ellen, a predator gazing at prey. And of course, the shadow sequence, Orlok's silhouette stretching impossibly as he climbs the stairs, his claw reaching toward Ellen's heart. It's cinema distilled to its purest terror, light, shadow, and suggestion. Nosferatu is more than a silent vampire story. It's a film that survived its own death sentence. Born from occult ambitions, nearly destroyed by lawsuits, it somehow lived on to define cinematic horror. It matters not just because it was first, but because it was bold. It showed how shadows could be scarier than monsters, how natural landscapes could become nightmare backdrops, and how horror could carry the weight of plague, death, and fear. 100 years later, those images, the shadows, the coffins, the stare of Count Orlok, still haunt the screen. And with filmmakers like Robert Eggers returning to it today, this century-old nightmare still casts a shadow. Next time on Cinematic Century Chronicle, we'll continue our journey with another landmark of silent horror, Hexen 1922, a film that blends witchcraft, history, and the grotesque into something unlike anything else from its era. Subscribe and join me as we continue to chronicle the course of 100 years of film. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.